Hello, my name is Chris and I'm a U-Haul hitch professional. If you're planning on towing a trailer with your Ford Bronco, then you're going to need trailer wiring. It is required by the law. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this install. You will need the following tools or supplies to complete this installation. For this installation, we will be installing with LED lights, so we have the appropriate LED light kit. If your Bronco does not have LED lights, the steps in this video will be similar, but you will need to order the non-LED light kit. I will go ahead and link that in the description below. To gain access to the tail light connection, we will remove 6 fasteners, 4 plastic trim clips, and 2 10mm hex head bolts. Use a 10mm socket for your 2 hex head bolts. For your plastic trim fasteners, use a screwdriver and a trim panel tool. We can now gently pry out the trim cover. For this installation, I am going to show you a more off-road friendly way to mount your converter box. The directions do call out mounting it to the frame underneath there. If you're just going to city drive your Bronco, that should be just fine. But a lot of our customers, like this one, he plans to get it dirty and very wet. So we're going to hide the converter box up here. We're going to want to hide some wires behind the tail light. So we're going to go ahead and loosen these 2 8mm fasteners using an 8mm wrench. We do not need to remove our tail light. We only wanted to loosen these 2 bolts to gain some access to hide some wires behind it. Now let's go ahead and disconnect the electrical connector. Now repeat these steps for the passenger side tail light. So additionally, for my off-road install, we're gonna route the power wire through the driver's rear wheel trim area. So let's go ahead and loosen up the trim to make routing that wire a little easier. Remove 3 plastic fasteners from the curve of the wheel trim and 1 additional fastener behind the tire in the frame of the vehicle. We can now gently pry back our wheel trim and expose the area we're gonna pass our wire through. We're gonna need to take an extra length of flexible wire to use as a fishing device. And we're gonna pass it up a hidden channel into above the tail light where we're gonna hide the converter box. So pass the fishing device up as high as you can get it. You may want a second set of hands to go up there and reach and grab it and pull it from the other side. We're now ready to install our power wire. We will be installing the U-Haul exclusive pre-braided Power Wire 1. So in order to utilize all our pre-braiding, we're gonna run a fishing pole down the engine compartment and bring this end back up to start. Pass your fishing device down the firewall, avoiding hot and moving parts. Tape the fuse end of your power wire to the fishing device. Now pull your wire back up. Be sure to hide your power wire behind any existing vacuum lines, hard metal brake lines, maybe even air conditioning lines, to keep it as away from the engine and moving parts as possible. You can go up over your brake master cylinder, hide it behind some more electrical wires around the fuse panel to where we will connect underneath our fuse cover. You can now use a 13mm socket to remove this nut to attach the fuse holder. Do note that once you make the connection, you will have 1 energized connection for the fuse. Let's go ahead and cover this with a cover and now connect our fuse holder. Retighten the nut snugly, but do not over tighten. Pass the fuse holder wire through this space. On our fuse cover, we've now passed our new fuse wire through here. So let's go ahead and trim off this little flap of plastic using some tin snips. You can now replace your fuse cover. You can now insert the fused power wire. You can now use provided zip ties to zip tie the power wire to existing hard metal brake lines or electrical lines. You can now pass the power wire over the driver's side frame where you will find the hard metal brake lines, which we can follow to the rear of the vehicle. When passing the power wire behind the driver's side wheel trim, make sure you put the wire above this interior trim clip, and then you can replace the trim clip, making sure it never falls out into the tire. You can now tape your power wire to the previously ran fishing device and pull it up to above the tail light cavity. We're now ready to install our wire harness. We're going to begin with the passenger side green wire and route backwards. Because we're going to be now in the lower parts of the vehicle and this is an off-road install, we're going to go ahead and protect this wire with some extra wire loom. This will not be included with the kit. You can pick it up at your nearest local U-Haul Hitch Center, or you can purchase it from the link in the description below. In order to get an idea for where to put the wire loom for the bumper, let's go ahead and pseudo place the converter box up here. Bring the wire over. Be sure to go underneath the door's hydraulic bracket. Now connect the electrical connector. Now connect the harness to the tail light. Now pass the green wire behind the second bracket bolt. Here is where you can begin to install your wire loom. As you can see, there's some body mold lines. We're going to protect the wire from that and work the wire loom back towards the converter box. You can now tape the wire loom to the electrical wire. We now want to pull the wire loom as far down the green wire as we can and tape the other end. You can now tape up the seam in your wire loom every couple of inches along the way. We can now pass the wire loom and wire behind our bumper, and we will go underneath and affix it to an existing electrical wire hidden in the bumper. On the passenger side, above the exhaust bracket, you will see a gap between the brackets and there's an electrical wire in here. We need to get a zip tie around it and zip tie to it. There's one more spot like this on the driver's side of the vehicle. Be sure to pull your wire tight between the bumper and the trim before pulling this second zip tie tight. We can now connect the power wire using a heat shrink butt connector. Melt the plastic with a heat source. You can now affix the converter box using double-sided sticky tape. Pass the 4 flat and green wires behind the taillight bracket. Now let's connect the driver's side taillight harness. Disconnect a little bit of white ground wire for yourself, and then spool up all this excess wire and zip tie it together. We can now mount our ground screw right here using a 10mm socket. Be sure to tighten this back down snugly, but do not over tighten. And be sure to line the bracket back up using the paint as a line. You can now pull the slack out of your power wire down into the wheel well, or we can now secure the excess with a zip tie. Now pass the 4 flat connector through the cavity behind the bumper and vehicle and underneath so we can mount it on a bracket. Because we're so close to the exhaust, we're gonna go ahead and try to get over the frame. Use our fishing device. There's a small gap between this tie down and the frame brackets. Should be able to pass a length of wire over. Tape the connector to your fishing wire. Now pull your wire back up. You can wrap a couple layers of electrical tape to provide abrasion resistance in this area. You can now mount the wire harness on a bracket. If you do not have one of these, you can pick one up at your nearest local U-Haul Hitch Center or order one from the link in the description below. Use a 3/16 drill bit to mark your desired area. Because we're drilling into steel, it may be beneficial for you to use an air-powered drill. The bracket does come with provided hardware. We, however, are going to use a rivet. Place the retention strap of the dust cover over the 4 flat connector before passing it through the bracket. Support the bracket with one hand and wiggle the harness into place. And now cover with the cover. You can also use more electrical tape to provide abrasion resistance to tuck the wires behind this panel. We're now ready to reinstall all the fasteners and taillight trim. Now return the wheel trim and the remaining fasteners. Now that the wire harness has been installed, we can come back up to the engine compartment and install our 10 amp fuse. That concludes trailer wiring on your Ford Bronco with LED tail lights. Remember, if you have non-LEDs, I will link that kit in the description below, but your install will be the same. Remember to practice safe trailering. We can't wait to see you out there. If you have any questions about the products seen in this video, or if you'd like to schedule an installation with your local U-Haul hitch professional, please visit us online at uhaulhitches.com. You can also download the U-Haul app using the link in the description for even more ways to manage your hitch and towing needs.